Miss Sierra Leach, how you doing?
Good.
Happy fucking birthday.
Thank you.
How does it feel to be 25?
I don't feel any differently. Like I said, I think I've been really exhausted from all of the travel and all of that stuff. So
Just like recent travel?
recent travel, bachelorette parties, birthday celebrations.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy like what happened after like COVID. Like I feel like everyone just wants to like party and do the thing now, you know?
Yeah, but the thing is, for me, my body can't do it anymore. So I used to be able to like party, travel. I mean, like I remember traveling with the backpack and like being able to go days at a time. And now I have like 2 glasses of wine and I'm like, I'm out.
Maybe do you think that's an age thing, or do you think that's like because you had to like a surgery recently, or do you think it's because like you haven't worked out as much as like you did like when you were in college?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
I think it's a combination of everything. I think my surgery definitely had a huge impact of like just losing my mobility for like months at a time. And then obviously working out, I think plays such an impact in that. But also like when you were talking about COVID, I feel like we just get so used to not doing much, you know? During COVID, yeah. Like at least for me, I was like very chill. I wasn't doing a whole lot.
what did you do during COVID?
Well, I did learn how to cook. We were talking about this earlier.
Yeah.
I love to cook, so I was watching videos and teaching myself.
Did you learn through like YouTube, or what did you learn through?
Well, I learned a lot through trial and error. I'm not a big fan of recipes.
Why not?
I don't know. It just like takes away the creativity of it. So I have like more fun. Me and my roommate have coined the term jazz. So like, what are you cooking? Jazz. And it just essentially means you come and you just play with things in the kitchen and you start cooking that way.
We were talking earlier today, like you are really into like Asian foods and stuff like that. And how do you jazz Asian food if you don't know like the basic stuff that goes in it?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I know like the basic spices and like I told you I really like curry, and I feel like curry, like especially like green curry, red curry,
I have no clue how to
Thai
make curry.
I mean, and probably if somebody who really liked Asian cooking would not like my Thai curry because it's not really, you know, scripted in the sense of like a recipe. But I don't know. I've watched like a few YouTube videos, so I can see. I watched one where it was like actually in Thai, and I was like having to translate it, and I was like, okay, this is how they do it. And then I just took like the main pieces of that.
Okay.
And then
So you have some base.
so some base, but then the rest of it is like I don't measure. I just like think it takes away the fun of it. So it's just like a little bit here, a little bit here, and then so it comes out different. So that's why I hate cooking for people, which is why I don't know that I could ever be a chef with my love of cooking.
Yeah.
Because like me, I don't mind.
I feel like coming from a bartending perspective, measurements are like super important to make the cocktail turn out to be really good. And I feel like measuring is part of the creativity.
Really? Okay,
Yeah.
can you expand on that? Because I don't know what that totally means.
So, for example, like there's so much like citrus that like will make a drink like pair well with some sugar to make like a really good cocktail. So like if you're just kind of like eyeing it, well, we have counts and stuff, which is still measurements, but if you just eye it and you're guessing here and there, I was like, oh, this should add more, this should add this, and you kind of just throw a ton of things together, you might be lucky and it might taste really good. But like sometimes it's all the right ingredients are there, but the product is not as good as it should be because the measurements aren't where they're like chemically where they're supposed to be at. And that's similar to food in my opinion.
I see what you're saying. And I think not necessarily food, but I think especially with baking, I think that is definitely like it's more of a science in a sense, but you can get creative with science. I was watching Iron Chef the other day. Have you seen this?
I've seen a couple episodes.
Oh my gosh. I think I told you. I watched this show and I like was ready to put my 2-week notice in at my job. I was applying to cooking schools, like no plan, no nothing, because it was exactly like you say, it was like more of a science of like they are presented with a food and then they have to just come up with something. But like the recipe bases that they have, these like science part of mixing like spice and chocolate and things you would never think to put in food. And so it was really cool that way. And so one day,
why do you think you like why do you think you like cooking so much? Like what has it done for you, especially during COVID or just like in general?
Well, I think I like cooking so much.
Because you never grew up cooking, correct?
Oh, no.
No.
I remember when I went off to college for the first time, I had never made myself a meal.
Never made yourself a meal.
Never made myself a meal. And then I went off to college and by myself where I didn't know anybody, and then had to start cooking, and I lived in an apartment, not a dorm. And I remember
Wait, was this your apartment in Seattle?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the first meal that I made was spaghetti, and I burnt the shit out of it, and I just like couldn't even make spaghetti, and it was like so disheartening.
Oh my
So
goodness,
I thought that I
thought
hated cooking for the longest time. I was like, I can't cook anything.
Yeah.
And then I moved to Costa Rica, and so I went to the University for Peace, the UN mandated. So essentially what happens is you have all these people from all over the world, India, Japan, France, Italy, Ecuador, like all of these things that come together, and we would have essentially like dinner nights where one night we would go to my friend's house who's from Italy, and she would cook pasta, and it had to be done a very specific way. And it was like, I don't know, you just got to share like such a culture like over food, and like we got to talk and drink wine, and like it just becomes like this like cultural environment of like being able to share things over and through food. And so I think that was when like my love for like cooking really started. And then when I was living in Costa Rica, the pandemic happened, and so then I came home. And
you had the opportunity to do all of it.
And it was like, I have nothing to do. I'm sad.
Yeah, that's funny.
I'm just gonna cook.
Because like I remember I visited you in Seattle. What was it for? Was it just for shits?
Just for shits.
Because we went to go see Life in Color.
Life in Color.
Was that the main thing? Like, we're going to that, come visit?
No, I think it was like, come visit around this time. And it was like, there's a rave happening. Let's go to the rave.
I think that's the first and last rave I went to.
Why the last? Did you like it? Do you like raving?
No, I don't think so. I think I had a bad experience because the paint was kind of disgusting.
Fair. Oh my gosh, I haven't been to a rave in a long time, but I love raves. But I'm like such a people person, and like I want to love you and kiss you and touch you and just like express my emotions.
Yeah.
And
I think I'm a people person too, though.
In like a touchy-feely way, though. I mean,
I like hugging people.
Like strangers?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then shoot. And I just like dancing and
Well, I was dancing a little bit more so now since my girlfriend dances. But back to the point of I visited you in Seattle and you made me breakfast one day. And do you remember what you made me?
I don't remember.
It was just eggs and turkey bacon.
How was it?
You were into turkey bacon, right? At one point?
I think so, yes.
And you burnt the shit out of the eggs.
I do. I remember. Okay.
And I was like, thank you. I appreciate it. Which I'm very appreciative that you cooked me breakfast. But that's so interesting because like I remember like you would cook stuff like at home and you're like, sorry, like I know it's bad, like whatever. And now that you're so into food, it's awesome to see. It's cool.
It's crazy to me. And this is like a huge example for life of like, you think that. And two, when I look back at my time when we were all.
I think what?
Think that of me when I was, not the best. Like that's what your image of me of like this not great
cooking.
Cook. Yes. Yeah. In that lens of things. And I just mean to say like when I went to the University for Peace, I had the same knowledge of cooking, like zero. And so everyone would come to these parties with like these dishes and I would be like in charge of brownies and I would fuck it up because I wouldn't follow a recipe. And I'm like, I just know that if I follow my heart, like it's going to work out. And it never worked out. And so like whenever we had parties, they were like, Sierra, just like go make a bag of chips. Like, and it's crazy for me to think like, I'm so different from that now. Now I love to cook. I love to cook for people. Like I love to share food. And I would say like, I'm a pretty decent cook now. And like to think that people think of me as like this horrible cook, I think it's so interesting, like how things change.
I don't
over
think
time.
of you as a horrible cook. I think I had an experience of a bad meal.
That's fair. I know, but like, like if that's your only experience of me, like that's just what you must think.
The second one was you made tacos at your parents' house, and that shit was fire.
I do not remember that.
Oh, okay.
I don't remember a lot of stuff apparently. When did that happen? But essentially, just like my point though of like, I don't know. I think. And there's just so much to learn and like so much can happen in such a little time of like 3 months, 6 months, you can learn a new skill. And it like, I feel like cooking is now a part of my personality in some ways of like, I just want to do this. And
that's awesome.
But like, I haven't seen any of my friends, especially now that I live in Nashville and I don't know anybody and I don't cook for a lot of people. So it's just like me, myself and I, like, this is what I do.
Well, I feel like cooking for yourself is like awesome too.
Oh, for sure. I truly believe in like romanticizing your life. I'm big into love and romance. I honestly, Valentine's Day is my favorite holiday.
Really?
It is. but like too, just like making yourself breakfast and having a coffee. I'll buy myself flowers and like put on some music.
Yeah.
And I feel like my life is a movie when I do that.
No, it's a vibe. I feel like you should treat yourself and go on dates by yourself and stuff like that. Like some of the best times that I have that are very, I guess, like peaceful and like I have like very good thoughts is like when I go to a movie by myself or to a dinner by myself and like just like experience the experience for what it is. You know?
Absolutely. I mean, I've seen
And a lot of
this.
people think it's weird though.
Yeah. Oh,
Like
you poor thing.
like my mom would be like, "Why are you going out to the movies by yourself? You're so weird." I'm like, "Is it though?"
Yeah.
She was like, "I would never do that." I was like,
Yeah.
"Why not?"
I love it. Although, like, I would say I'm a little bit of a cheater in the sense of I love going out by myself because I love meeting new people. And I think that when you go out in groups sometimes, you know, you're just so present in what you're doing. And so I feel like when I'm by myself, it like opens me up to all these new things that I miss if I'm distracted by you in front of me, you know? So like I have met, like, I do all of my traveling by myself. I prefer to travel alone. I prefer to have coffee by myself, like all these, like go to bars by myself sometimes.
I love going to bars by myself.
Oh my gosh. So I just love the conversations that you like strike up with these strangers and the people that you meet. And like, I mean, like I'm thinking about one time I was in Jamaica, and I met a girl at a bar. I was like by myself and we're still friends. And that was like 6 years ago.
Yeah.
And we're just like, we still keep in touch. We've met up in New York. Like,
that's awesome.
And just like from these like
small interactions
that would have never happened if I was distracted by other things, you know?
Yeah. Why do you think you, I guess ever since I've known you, you've been very, cut from a different cloth from most of our friend groups, right? And I would say I'm like relatively similar, but you from the get was like, I want to get out of this small town. I want to experience the world. And out of, I think, any of my close friends, like you're one of the only people who have like gone to school in a different country. You have like right away you were like, I'm gonna go to Seattle and play soccer. I'm gonna go to New York and play soccer after that. And then you went to Costa Rica, and then you went to Ecuador and all these things. So why do you think that you just have a hunger to, I guess, like experience more from a spot that from, I guess, like other than where you're currently at? Because I feel like wherever you're at, you're like, oh, like I've had enough of this. I want to experience something different. Sure. When like, for me, I believe that you could experience those things. I mean, like emotions and stuff with people at one spot or a similar spot and still go through those growth periods, but it's different though, you know? So like, why do you think you're that way?
Sure. That's a hard question, I think, to pinpoint. But when I think about it, I think about what my mom used to tell me when I was little. So when my parents, when we were growing up, we didn't have a lot of money to like go on these crazy vacations. So what we would do is like road trip every weekend. We go camping, or we, you know, just like a one-day trip here or there. And so we were going all of the time. And so I remember my mom saying like, one time we went on a family trip and like this, I think we went to the Grand Canyon. Like we drove all the way to Arizona, Grand Canyon, we came back, and then I was like, okay, so what's next? And I'm like 6 years old. And like, I'm just like, what's happening next? And even so, like when I was a baby, she said that like she would be like holding me at a party, and I'm like fighting to the death to stay awake because I don't even speak English yet. And like, I'm fighting to the death to stay awake to not miss out on anything. And so like, I don't know, you could argue that there's like some things in my life that have happened that have made me this way, but like I think it's just like kind of like ingrained in who I am, like who my personality is. And I think like, I don't know, you could like break this out into a whole like nature versus nurture debate, but like some of my key traits of like never wanting to miss out and always wanting what's next and like all these things, like it's just like always been who I am. Yeah. But when I think about when I first went to Seattle, you know, I was 17 when I decided to move away from home to a place with nobody.
You graduated at 17? I guess you were younger.
I'm younger.
Yeah.
So I mean, I graduated at 17. So like, I couldn't even like technically get an apartment by myself. Yeah. And I was like, I'm going. Like, thankfully my parents were supportive and they were able to like co-sign with me and all that stuff. And not everybody is that lucky. But when I went to Seattle, I thought like, I'm going to go. And then it'll be a great 2 years. I played soccer, which is like why I got to go. And I thought I would come back. And then like maybe, you know, I love like growing up with people, you know, I've had the same friends for 10 years and all that stuff. But when I went to Seattle, it just like opened up my world of like all of the possibilities. I mean, like where we're from in Fresno, it's just like the same things, the same people, the same mindsets. Yeah. Like it's just like you're kind of like you're told what to believe and then that's it. And so I don't know, just like challenging that and then like going my own way and then seeing that there's so much more out there. Like even in the going back to food of like I tried my first exotic food. I mean, I don't even know that it's exotic. I had Thai food for the first time in my life when I moved to Seattle. I was like, how have I been missing out on this my whole life?
That's crazy because, like, I live in Fresno and there's some really good Thai places in Fresno.
And I think, too, like, familially, like, my family is so comfortable in the same. Like, we would go to Red Robin every Friday. I'd never eaten anything in Fresno besides Red Robin.
Really?
That was it.
Yeah.
And, like, every Sunday we would have steak. And then, like, that was my experience of, like, eating out and, like, culture and you know. And so then when I went to Seattle and it was like this whole new world of music and sexuality and all of these like fun things and parties and colors, and I was just like, this is the coolest thing ever. And then from there I was like, I am never going back. And then of course now I've lived all these places and traveled.
I've been to Seattle a couple times. I went with you. One of my good friends, Kate, lives in Seattle as well, or I think Washington area. And like it's very green, the hikes are very nice, it's a beautiful area, but I don't know, it didn't like scream like oh like move here or like I love it. Like what did you like about it so much?
I think the music scene was really special for me. I'd never been to like a concert besides Carrie Underwood and Shania Twain. Those were like my all-time favorites on like special occasions.
Did you go to those concerts in high school?
Probably before then. I think like maybe elementary school. Like, you know, like Shania Twain was my first love. And like, you know what I mean? Like they were when I was younger. And then as I got older, I just like never was interested in music that much. Just like, I don't know, just like wasn't me. And then when I went to Seattle, they had all of these concerts like all the time, like $20. You just go.
That's awesome.
I saw like before they were big, like Bishop Briggs. I saw The Fray, like all of these things and like these tiny like.
I remember you told me this.
It's different. Like, you know, when you think about a concert in like some places, it's like these huge arenas and it's like you have your assigned seat. Where there, it's like an open room with like 30 people and you just like hang out and you talk and you listen to music. I met so many friends at concerts. Like,
that's awesome. I feel like music has like a special magic to it, like especially in an intimate setting.
Yeah.
Like the way it makes you feel.
Sure.
And how it connects like people to people, you know?
Yeah. Well, exactly like you say, like, I think one, how it connects us, but like just how it makes you feel. Like one thing I've seen recently, like I would consider myself like a fairly emotional person.
Sure.
I wear my heart on my sleeve all the time, but still music makes me more open to a lot of my emotions and it allows me to feel things that I have never experienced before by empathetically listening to what someone else is saying. Like, I don't know if this makes sense, but like at the time, like I had never experienced heartbreak or I don't know any of those things, but when I listen to a song about heartbreak, I want to cry and I feel heartbroken for that 2 minutes and 30 seconds.
Yeah. So
and
there's a couple of types. So like there's the listener, like, so I'm really into lyrics. Like I'll listen to like the lyrics and like I'll feel like whatever they're saying. And there's like a lot of people who like listen to EDM or just like, not just EDM, but a lot of types of music that it's the beat, it's the tone, it's whatever that gets them into their feeling. What type are you?
I'm a beat person. Okay. So, I mean, eventually if I start listening to a song and I like the lyrics, but when I like, especially too, like I moved to Costa Rica and then I moved to Ecuador, I can't understand half of the stuff in Spanish that I listen to. And so it still makes me cry though. Like, I don't know what they're saying. I could like tell someone to listen to them. Like there was one song that I liked. It's called Amarame. And essentially, Amarame.
Amarame? Okay.
And essentially, it's about like tying them up and like just all these like super sexual things and, you know, like making me sick and curing me. Like it's just really nasty song, but it's like so beautiful. And I just was like jamming to it. And then my friend was like, do you know what they're saying? And I'm like, nope. Yeah. And so, but I think like, it's just like, I think it's a brilliant display of humanity and like the things that we're able to do with music. Like if you think back to like the beginning of things, like when we create, like how we even created instruments and Beethoven, wasn't he like deaf?
Towards the end.
Okay. And
Yeah,
like still
towards the
being
end.
able to create these like beautiful melodies based
Yeah.
off like vibration and feeling, and it just like gives us such an open view of the universe. I know that sounds dramatic, but like I truly feel that way sometimes of like the things I like really love humanity, and I think music is one of those things that shows me like, wow, that's incredible. Like it's incredible what we're able to do. And so when I'm listening to like the thought that someone puts into something, it just like makes me feel
Yeah, no, I think about it sometimes because like objectively
sorry.
you're good. Objectively, like you just look at it from outside's perspective and it's just like some human being strumming a guitar or singing some lyrics that they wrote, and they're making like millions of dollars off like records and stuff. But it's way more than that. Like they're touching people's lives. They're telling stories that like stories have an impact on people in so many ways. And if you could have a story that's so relatable to your life, to my life, to like of heartbreak, of friendship, of like war, of peace, you know, like if you could hit those big landmarks or big emotional marks, it has a lot of value, you know. And then you realize like, oh, I get it. Like that's why they get paid so much. That's why like they are so big and known and stuff like that, because it's not that just they sing or play the guitar or just say words that they wrote. Like it's much more than that, you know.
Yeah. And I'm curious too, like with that, I mean, I don't play an instrument or anything. I know that you do a little bit. Has playing music given you more of like an appreciation for music? Like, does it affect at all? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, you think of something as like something, and then you try it and it's like, wow, this is actually really hard. It takes a lot of skill. Or, you know what I mean? Like, has that
Well, it's
affected
interesting.
you?
So like I look at instruments and like singing and stuff like that from a structural standpoint. Like I'll learn a chord, I'll learn notes, I'll learn like stuff like that, right? But there's someone out there, there are a lot of people out there, I've met a ton of them, who will play the keyboard, will play the guitar, stuff like that, without knowing what a C chord is, without a G chord is, and they just play. And it's a gift because they just hear and they just like feel something, and their hands move, their voice moves into a way that's just like a beautiful art piece. And I don't have that. I could learn all the chords of the song. I could memorize these lyrics and I could sing it beautifully. I could play it beautifully, but it's not my art piece. I wasn't in my room just like fucking around and it just came out, you know? So like, I don't think so for me. Like, because like I'm looking at it from an analytical standpoint, like I'm learning the structure, like how to play it, like all these things. When some people are gifted with this talent of just like, I feel these emotions and I'm letting you hear it through this music, you know?
That was a good way of putting it. I like that a lot. That's how I feel. Sometimes it's hard to put into words too. Like I can't explain why I'm crying or why I feel this deeply. It just like touches something.
Yeah.
But I think it goes to a lot of things.
Yeah, back to like that song that you were talking about where like it was just like erotic and like it was just beautiful. Like that's kind of like old school R&B, you know? Like it's very like Justin Timberlake, like sexy and shit like that, but like it's erotic, but it's like super beautiful. You're like, why am I so turned on right now, you know?
Well, and I think that goes, and especially too, like coming back to like this whole like sexual thing, like I don't know, from where we come from, I don't know, sexuality is not talked about. Sex is not talked about. I mean, I never had
the talk.
Never had a sex talk, never had anything, like just none of that stuff, nothing, like hardly anything. And so like when you talk about like this sexual song being beautiful, it's like, because it is beautiful, you know? And I think like I don't know, I think there's shame around talking about sex or, you know, like being open and talking about it. But like, I think it is such a beautiful thing to, I don't know, share this connection with people or, you know, like, I don't know. I think like, why can't it be beautiful? And I think that we don't always think that way of like.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely like a generational thing, you know, because like, I don't know, maybe our parents weren't like, you were never taught to talk about politics, sex, or religion much, you know? And I don't know why, because I guess me and you are pretty open-minded, I believe. And we always question things. And I believe that's healthy. I believe it's healthy because we were taught, back to what you said, we're like, steak and Red Robin is the road, and that is it. And we do that every single week. We go camping on the weekends, and that's it. Period. End of story. And there's much more to life than that, you know. But there's also, like, I admire it sometimes because there's some beauty in routine too. And you can, like, be in your same routine and be so happy, you know, just in that routine. Like, you go to church on Sunday, you have these steaks on Saturday, like, you have your red roll, you go to, you know, and everyone has their, like, little community, and there's some beauty in community. Like, I feel like I'm super happy in my life because I have a lot of communities that are relatively consistent, you know, like working out, like gym, like bartending community, stuff like that. But it's different every week. It's not like the same.
Sure.
But we grew up in the same. You know?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Gosh, there's like so much to say there. You just like touched so many important topics. But I think, like, firstly, just talking about community, like, I don't know. I don't think that we're meant to, like, be these individualistic people that, like, sometimes life or society, like, takes us towards.
Individualistic people?
Yeah. Like, I don't know. Just, like, so focused on ourselves. Like, even where, how can I explain this? Like, even in the US, where I feel like there's a sense of community, and in LA, like, it sounds like you have such a beautiful life here, and you have, like, gym friends and work friends and podcast friends, like, whatever it is, like, all these great things that, like, build your community around you. And I've had that too. And I think it's a little bit harder for me though, because I move so much that it's hard to make, like, consistent people in my life. I have never felt a sense of community like I did when I lived in Costa Rica, and we couldn't even communicate. Like, I mean, I lived with a host family, so there was 10 of us living in a host family together.
Yeah.
And
Costa Rica was right after New York.
Yeah. Okay. So once I graduated from college in New York, I moved to Costa Rica for grad school, and I was staying with a host family, you know, for a year, and none of them spoke English. And at this point, I didn't speak Spanish. And so,
how was that?
I remember thinking, like, what am I doing? I just decided to go on a limb. Like, it was just like one of those things where it was like the universe kind of aligned.
Like, did you communicate with, like, your hands, like, pointing and shit? Pretty like
much.
that?
I mean, I'm a talker with my hands anyway. And two, like, and this is what showed me so much about energy. Like, right now, if you muted your mic and I'm talking and I'm laughing, you know, I love to laugh. I love to, like make, you know, like, all of these things. Like, you can kind of get a sense of who someone is, essentially. And, like, everybody is just like that. And I have never laughed so hard in my entire life. I mean, like, every day, like, when was the last time you laughed? Like, you know, like, obviously I think, like, this trip we've been laughing the whole time, but, you know, like, there's some people I'm like, have I ever laughed with them? Or like, I go days without laughing, you know, and, like, every day I was laughing. Every morning breakfast I was laughing. And I have no idea what they were saying. It was just like, this is this great community environment. And, like, two, I mean, growing up, I think my family was just so busy. We never, like, sat down together. Yeah. In Costa Rica, we would sit down every morning for breakfast together. We would sit down for lunch together. We would sit down for dinner together. Even though we spent all of our time together, we would throw parties on the weekends together. And, like, it was, like, such a family environment. And, like, too, they're, like, so we had our house, and then next door, the grandparents lived. Next door to them, the aunts and uncles lived. Behind, the cousins lived. Like, the neighborhood is literally all family. And, like, you just, I don't know, you go out into public and everybody knows each other. I mean, like, these small towns.
I mean, that's kind of similar to Fresno, though.
Yeah, exactly. But I never felt that way in Fresno. And so maybe it's just, like, my personal situation, but it's like something I can't even put my finger on it. Like, the love, like, the unconditional love and, like, support of, like, people you don't even know. Yeah. I mean, it's like, oh my gosh, you're struggling. Let me try to help you, even though I have nothing. I remember one time we were traveling through Costa Rica. We were going on a road trip. We didn't have transportation. We didn't have anything. How did you guys get around? Hitchhiking.
Oh, really?
Yes.
You've hitchhiked?
I've hitchhiked. No, oh my gosh. I would hitchhike by myself in foreign countries where I didn't speak the language. I'm like, please don't, like, you just have to believe in people. And when you believe in people, it's, I don't know, it works out. Although in the US, I would never hitchhike. I feel a little bit.
There's a lot of people who Not as much anymore, but there are people who have hitchhiked. Like I have
Yeah.
a friend who's hitchhiked from California to New York.
Oh my gosh, wow. I would love to try it. I feel more nervous in the US.
Sure.
In other countries, it's more of like part of their culture and it's not such like people are happy to help and give you a ride, and I felt so much safer even though I couldn't even tell them where I was going. Like I'm just like pointing to shit. Like
Really?
yeah.
How did you learn Spanish by not because they don't speak English, so they can't
Yeah.
really translate.
It's just something that like happens in your brain. I mean, like, of course I had a little bit of like high school, but like mostly just by
didn't learn.
learning.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
3
mean,
years
you're
of
just
Spanish
trying
in
to
high
speak.
school. I don't really know much.
You just get so frustrated eventually, and like, and two, when everyone is speaking it all around you all the time, you just like eventually start picking up on things.
That's
and
wild.
like one day I could just like speak Spanish, like it's whatever.
That's
but
great.
wait, I wanna say this. I
Uh-huh.
wanna like go back to this story because I think that this is
Yeah.
like just before we move on from the sense of like community and like support from one another. Like my life was probably changed by this trip. So we were hitchhiking, and we went from like one side of Costa Rica to the other, which like Costa Rica maybe is like a little bit smaller than California. So like in
Yeah.
the grand scheme of things, it's not that big, but all these territories are different, as in like the US, like there's different stuff. So we hitchhiked from one side to the other, and just like by truck drivers, families, buses, like anybody who was willing to give us a ride didn't ask for anything. But we got dropped off in this town. We were trying to go see a waterfall.
Sure.
But I mean, this town had no grocery stores, no buildings, no nothing, like a very like impoverished town in Costa Rica. Pretty much all they had was like this natural like preserve. The houses were made out of wood. They had no flooring, like all dirt. And we were camping, and so that was like kind of how we were
Sure.
doing it. And it started pouring rain as soon as we got off, like whoever dropped us off.
Okay.
Like pouring rain, where it's like we are not going to survive. Like
Sure.
there's no hotels. I mean, like there's literally not even a grocery store. It's like a like fruit stand is like the closest thing. Like
That's wild.
what are we going to do? There's no taxis, there's no Ubers, there's no service. Like what are we going to do? Where are we going to stay?
Yeah.
And so we obviously didn't think
You don't
it
have
through.
a tent or anything.
No, we had a tent.
Okay.
But I mean
It's pouring. It makes
our
sense
tent
to
was
put it
not
up.
yeah. And I
Yeah.
mean like we were not professional camping. We were like, hey, this tent that sleeps 2 people, 3 of us can easily, I mean like we had zero planning went
Okay.
into this trip. But it was just like we were in like school and whatever. So we went to the only thing that we could see for cover, because I mean like it's not like the US where there's like buildings and stuff. It's like
Yeah.
stick houses.
Okay.
And so there was like one house that had an extra long roof
Yeah.
onto the street.
Yeah.
So we are like trying to hide in the in the like cover of it, and we're just like trying to wait out the rain, like hoping it stops raining. And this family like pokes their head out the window, and they're like talking to us. They're like, "What are you doing?" We tell them what we're doing. They invited us to stay with them. I mean, again, this family who has nothing, like dirt floors, the toilet doesn't work, they have no shower, they shower with a bucket. I mean, I think it was a family of 4 sharing one room with one bed, and if you weren't sleeping on the bed, you were sleeping on like literally the dirt floor. And they opened their home to us and tried to cook us like, I mean, I think we ate with them, and then of course like we traded off, but they let us stay with them. These strangers they never met, we slept in their living room floor, like in this like, I don't know, it was just, for me, that was like the most life-changing moment of my life of like, I don't think that you need to have anything to give anything, right? Like you can just like support each other through like, again, like all they gave us was a roof and like a little bit of food, but like, I don't know, it's just like so emotional for me, because like in the US sometimes like, I don't know, we just like don't share anything, or we don't like open our homes or open our spaces. And I know that like things are obviously different, but yeah, going to that idea of like community and like, I don't know, looking out for one another. And I don't know, I thought that was like a really special moment in my life.
I think it is. I mean, like you look at it, I don't think a lot of people in the United States would do that to a random stranger. There are some people, like I've seen it happen, and like there are the one-offs and stuff like that, and like I don't even think I would, like a homeless dude on the street who's like struggling, like and he like knocks on my car window, like I don't think I would, and it's just different culture in my opinion. But also like you can still like, I don't know. It's just wild. That's a crazy story, because like I feel like I'm a good dude when I'll like have people stay over who are struggling, like they're in between places, or like friends who like need to stay over, or like someone needs to go to the airport. Of course, I got you, you know. But like that's nothing compared to the story that you just told me.
Yeah, I mean, like if you think exactly, like if you have, like I think when you start having things, it's easier to give back. But what if you have nothing?
Yeah.
And like, I know that I am, and like this is what it changed my idea of like what it means to make an impact in the world. Like you don't need to have anything to impact somebody or to change something. Like I think about when I'm at my lowest point in my life, I'm so stressed out about like what's going on with me. It's so hard for me to focus on somebody else, and these people who again like, but to them it's not stressful. It's just like a part of the way things are, and like they have each other, and like they were probably like some of the more happy people that I know with nothing, and then like still being able to give on top of that. I don't know, just like change my mind of like, well, what I think
just giving in general, or helping other people is like so selfish in a way too, because like it makes you feel so good. And
yes, there's like a whole philosophy debate that we could get into.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, from personal training especially, it's taught me that no matter like changing someone's body, meaning like changing someone's life, has done so much for me more than for them, type of deal. Like there's this one guy who I was training when I was a student at UCLA, and he was like 350 pounds, like 6'7", big guy. And he lost like around 50 pounds within 3 months of training with me. And he was like, oh, I could walk up the stairs, I could hold my kid now, like those things. And I was like, wow, shit, like I helped this dude like do that, you know? And I didn't open my home to him or anything like that. But it did so much for me. Like, and I felt selfish in a way. I was like, why do I feel so good? And I feel like that's the answer, just like in terms of like no politics, like get politics out of the way, like anything like that. Like if you're a good person, if you care for other people, if you treat them right, and you're caring and generous and kind, like the world would just be a better place if you emphasize like those pillars of just like humanity. You know?
Absolutely. And I oh gosh, I love this topic so much. It makes me so excited. But I said like exactly what you're saying, and this is why like some of the things that I've thought about, so like I have a degree in environmental studies, and I also have like a master's degree in peace and development and all of these things, and I've worked in the nonprofit world for like as long as I've been able to work. And truly I believe sometimes I can make more of an impact talking to somebody and smiling and opening, like listening, or you know what I mean? I think like exactly what you're talking about, whether it's career or whether it's just like how we speak to somebody, the way that we are able to make an impact, it's just like infinite. And like if we could understand that and understand there is no right way to do things or one path to follow, like you can make a difference, you can make an impact on this world doing whatever you're doing exactly as you are, who you are, as long as you do it with like some sort of intention. Like I truly believe that like sometimes people who are cutting hair do way more than me, or way more than millionaires who are doing whatever they're doing, or you know, whatever is happening in their life, because they're interacting on a one-on-one level with people and like opening their ears and opening their heart and like giving people the time of day, which I don't always think happens. And so exactly like you're saying, like I think it is like a selfish thing. I remember studying this in philosophy of like, you know, is it, if we're doing things because it makes us feel good, is it like out of the goodness of our heart? I don't know, but like I don't know that it has to be, because if it makes you feel good and it makes someone else feel good, like I think like attaching all these labels and questions sometimes, like why? Just like if it makes you feel good, it makes them feel good, go do it. Like if it makes you happy, your happiness is like contagious. I think sometimes like when you're doing what you love, I think it inspires people to do what they love. And like that's my favorite thing about our relationship, of like every time we talk, I'm like so inspired. I just feel like you have something you want to do and you do it.
Thank you.
And like whatever it is, like finance or bartending or potty, like I remember when you were talking about this podcast, like it was just an idea in the back of your head, and like here we are filming the 50 something podcast. Like it's just, it's crazy to me, and that inspires me. And then when I go out and do the things that I want to do, like move another country, and then that inspires someone else.
Sure.
And then that is like this infinite butterfly effect, I like to call it. And I think, like, again, our impact is just like, if we take away these labels and like these ideas of what we're supposed to be, I don't know, it's just amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I've thought about that topic a lot. Do you know who Jordan Peterson is? Yeah, so he had this conversation like a long time ago. I don't remember when, but he was basically saying that, like, you're going to know 1,000 people in your lifetime. I'm going to know 1,000 people in a lifetime. So between you and me, like 1,000 times 1,000, our network is going to be around 1 million people. So just between you and me, you do that again, right? So 1,000 times 1,000 times 1,000. So you add one more person to the network. That's between us four. We have 1 billion people that we like, and there's only 8-9 billion in the world, right? So what you say to me and what I say to you in this conversation right now is way more important than you think.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
You
and
know?
like, just anybody who thinks that they can't make a difference, listen to that and like
Sure.
hear that, like the
Yeah.
impact that you have the ability to make in this lifetime.
Yeah.
Just like so far beyond what you think.
You know, and everyone's stuck in their own like worlds, you know, like we were talking about this the other day, like we were just driving down the highway and there's so many cars, especially in LA, and everyone has something that they're worrying about in their car. Everyone has a different conversation. Everyone's worrying about something different. Everyone's like has their own world.
Truly.
You know, and like you think about that, you're like, oh, you're not that special. Your problem's not that big. Like you need to chill the fuck out. Like,
Oh God, for sure.
you know,
This idea changed my life.
Sure.
Honestly, I don't remember where I heard it. It was some sort of podcast or something. But essentially, like you're saying, they're talking about, you know, I feel like we think we're the center of our universe, and then, but you're also the center of your universe,
Sure.
and whoever is over here is
Yeah.
the center of their universe. And like, if next time someone is driving down the freeway, think about this. Like the person
Yeah.
in the car next to you has their own whole world happening around
Yeah.
them. And like, it just gave me such a perspective of like, I don't know, like you said, we all have our own shit going on. And
Yeah.
like, it just, when you think about how small you are
Yeah.
in the grand scheme of things, like in that space, but then also just like in the universe of things, like millions of people, millions of galaxies, like all of these things, like, are my problems really that bad? Like, what if I just enjoyed where I am, what I'm doing, the life that I've been given, because I have no control over some things, and like just treat everybody with empathy and kindness. And I know it sounds so
It's
cheesy.
easier said than done.
It's truly,
It's
yeah.
easier
Oh
said than
God,
done.
for sure. Like,
Yeah.
when I'm having a bad day, I'm like, fuck off.
Yeah.
But the rest of the time, I'm trying to like be conscious about
Yeah.
like, how am I treating people? How am I making people feel?
Yeah, I
And-
think about that when people like cut me off or like throw a middle finger at me while I'm driving and stuff like that. I'm like, that didn't something a bad day. Like,
Yeah.
chill out,
Sure.
bro.
But I mean, in that space of things, like, have you ever seen, I think like we're so quick to assume things about other people. Like if anybody's been like that with you in person where they're like just rude or they flip you off, have you ever like come back at them with kindness?
Most of the time, no. It's not necessarily kindness. It's like, it's all just like absorb it and not react to
Sure.
it. It's not necessarily like someone flips me off. I'm like, I love you, bro. Have a great day. It's not usually that. It's like someone flips me off. We're just going to take it. And then like he'll stop. And then we'll both continue on our day.
Sure.
And it doesn't escalate.
Sure.
Because like if we argue right now and you
For
say
sure.
something mean and I say something mean back, and it's just gonna go boom, 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 and now we like are about to kill each other, and that happens like a lot. You see
Oh,
that in
for sure.
relationships, you
For
see that in
sure.
friendships. That's why friendships end. That's why marriages end. It's because of like react, and oh shit, like I can't react anymore because it's gotten so far that like we can't even have a relationship,
Oh, for sure.
you know.
I think that, yeah. I mean, I think it's just the way that we're built, and like you can go into a whole psychological debate about this with like the ego and all these other things.
Sure.
But, and like you said, it's easier said than done. I can only do this when I'm in my most healthy state, which is like very few and far in between.
Sure.
But in those situations where like somebody has been a total ass and I'm having a good day and I'm
Yeah.
like, you cannot kill my vibe. I'm like, you know what? I'm so sorry that this happened. Or like, I blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah. How can I fix this? Or, all these things. People are just like melted. And like, you see that it was like something else going on, or, I have, so what I do for my job, I do a lot of things, but one thing in particular is like donor engagement. So in my nonprofit, I speak with people who are donating and all these things. So I see like a really,
What's the nonprofit called?
Old Friends Senior Dog Sanctuary.
Old Friends Senior Dog
Yes.
Sanctuary. Okay.
So it's essentially exactly what it sounds like. It's a sanctuary for senior dogs. So only seniors.
What distinguishes it as a senior dog?
I think it kind of depends, and I'm like not great about this. I think like 8 or up typically.
Okay.
I mean, but if it's a big dog, they're young, like, you know, it's
Sure.
different small dogs, and so it's kind of just like dependent on that.
Yeah.
And so essentially, like, a lot of people love this mission because seniors get left behind sometimes. So I see like such beautiful things in people who are donating and trying to help out in any way they can, and like that's my whole job of like recognizing this. And I remember there was a situation. One lady was so upset. It was like an error that happened years ago, but something with the system, essentially like her donation got lost. And like, it was nothing great, like, you know, but like she was really upset. And, you know, you could have just like taken the blame and just like, okay, yeah, sure. Like, that's fine. Like, we move on. We're not going to like do anything about it. But when I was just like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like, please tell me a little bit about like why you support us. Like, what happened? Like, what's going on? Like, how did you end up here? Like, let me FaceTime you and show you at the sanctuary and like show you what an impact your donation has made. And I think like this is a job, so it's a little bit different than like if you were just out on the street with somebody. But like, she was like, I no longer support Old Friends. Like, I don't, this is like how it is. And then like having just like that simple conversation, and like I learned so much about her, and I learned about her dog, and like just showing somebody humanity. She was like, oh, I'm just so sorry. Like, I just was like really upset because I thought this. And like now having a conversation with you, she's like, you're back on my donation list. And again, I know this is a career example, so it's not so like clear cut, but like I think when you give people the space to like, when you treat them with kindness and give them a chance to like recognize, I don't know, their own behavior and, you know, feel the kindness or feel the space to like just be. I think that, I don't know, it totally changes things. And you hear things about like how people are just going through something, or, you know, it's just a bad day. And I don't know that we always give people the opportunity of like,
I feel like a lot of people don't. I mean, I back to the reacting thing. It's like a lot of people aren't getting heard because it's just like today's society's so quick pace. Like, I want to find an answer right now. I want to get paid right now. You know, it's so like, I want to find out the answer right now. And like, a lot of people don't get to express their opinions in a long form, like call or like a podcast or like whatever.
For sure.
And I feel like a lot is lost in that because there's no way you could articulate your thoughts properly in 10 seconds.
Oh, for sure.
You know?
Yeah. This is something that I've actually struggled with. When I moved to Ecuador, I mean, I couldn't communicate at all. In Costa Rica, people spoke English. It was like, okay. But when I chose to move to Ecuador, I don't know what I was thinking, but I was like, oh, there'll be people that speak English. I mean, like, I knew like basically like maybe 1, 2, 3 people who spoke English. And so when you get in a situation that I felt like my whole entire essence was lost, because it was like, if I can't speak about things and if I can't do things for people and like the way that I want to do them because I can't communicate and I can't understand them, who am I now? And like, I don't know. It just, it's one of those things. I don't know. It's like taking me a whole like.
What has traveling, I guess, so much and seeing so many cultures and experiencing the experience that you did, like such as that camping trip, like I guess done for you? Because one thing that I'm not necessarily slightly envious about, it's like you understand more. You've got to experience more cultures that I guess myself and most of the people I know have never done, including like your own parents
Oh, for sure.
or your friends. And it's given you a just like worldly perspective on things type of deal. Like what has that like taught you just about life, I guess?
Sure. Gosh, so many things. I think like the big thing is empathy. Like again, you see people living their lives in different ways and you understand different circumstances, and it truly allowed me to like see people for what they are and their experiences and not making judgments so quickly based on my perception of things. And it just allowed me to think about other people and what they're feeling and what they're thinking, and you know, essentially like in that side of things. But like going back to this idea of happiness, like it totally changed my idea of happiness. So I think like,
what's your idea of happiness?
I mean, I don't know that I have a definition like you have a definition. I know. I don't know that I've ever thought about it hard enough to create a definition. But like I used to think it was like attached to accomplishments and like, you know, I've done so many things and I've seen so many things. Like that was happiness for me of like, you know, doing the things that I said I want to do and all of that in all of my time. And like, of course, like having money and having like success, like, you know, career and those like very small ideas, like, which I think have a lot of weight, but you know, there's so much more than that. And so like seeing people without all of those things who have lived in the same place for 30 years, who have done the same job for 30 years and who are not necessarily worried about, I don't know, making moves or anything. It was just like this idea of connection. And I think like, now it doesn't matter where I am or what I'm doing as long as I'm connected to something, whether it's a person, myself, an idea, like just this idea of connection. Like happiness can be found everywhere and it's a choice. I mean, essentially, like I think there are of course like these external things. But I don't know if you want to like share your idea of happiness, but like I just have seen people with nothing who are the happiest people I've ever met, and they have everything to give and share, and like we have the best time sitting on a dirt floor sharing a $2 bottle of beer, like and that's it. And like I think that like these moments of happiness, like take all these other things away, happiness can be found in these like incredibly small things and like, but they're the big things. And like I don't know if that makes sense, but that has like taught me so much about like how I see my life and how I view happiness and like what I'm doing, and even impact that we go back to of like,
I used to always think that, or at least I came up to this conclusion. I told you this earlier in the last couple of days, is like, I feel like if you make $60,000 a year and if you're not happy, you're doing something wrong, because that pays for like a roof over your head, pays for like food on your table, it pays for like a decent quality of life that like a lot of people don't get to experience, right? And if you look at it objectively worldwide, like you and I are like the 1%. And you know more so than I do because you've been at those places and you're like, whoa, like we have so much more than most of the world, right? And now that you're saying that, I was like, maybe it's less than that. Like maybe you could be happy and joyful without making any money. And you've seen that. I mean, when I was in Ecuador, it was, I think I told you, the hardest time of my life. Also some of the happiest moments of my life. And I made $100 a month and I showered out of a bucket. Like it was, I mean, like my whole reality wasn't that, there was other things, but like truly it was just like such a, I don't know, is that like sense of like being around people. And I think it comes to a community thing. I really do. And if that's in a small town in Ecuador with like you sitting on the ground and drinking a bottle of beer, or if it's at a gym where you're working out and growing together, or if it's like a ton of like dudes with McLarens hanging out and they're millionaires. I think it's community. I really do. I think happiness derives from that. And my definition, I've said it many times on the podcast, is do what you want to do when you want to do it with the people who you want to do it with.
You know, I love that.
And I mean, like we were talking about paradigms, and like everyone believes different things, and so therefore you don't really know what's right, because what is right to you is wrong to someone else. And objectively, who's right, you know? And it's good to be open-minded to the fact that like if you're having a conversation, you might be wrong. And if you come at a conversation or an experience with that mindset, you're probably going to learn something. And you could either determine, oh, like I'm really thinking about it, I still think I'm right, or you really think about it, you're like, whoa, I might be wrong. And then you like change your paradigm. You know? And it's weird because no one has the same beliefs. Like no one person, in my opinion, believes A through Z exactly the same. You know, if it's through sexuality, politics, like working out, I might disagree on the way you fucking cook eggs. But some people might like them eggs, you know? You know what I'm saying? And it's just like, it's just life, in the fact that you're gonna believe different things in people. But if you share some common things and have a good conversation over it, and you share a community, like, it doesn't matter, like, if you differ in other ways. You know?
Absolutely. I think that's the most important sentiment. And even going into like politics, I think about that. Like, I got no two people believe the same thing, whether it's like all the people on the right or all the people on the left. But what I see when I have these conversations is like everyone's just so black and white. Or you think this, you must believe this. You think this, you must believe.
Not everyone. Like,
sure. Sorry, that was like a general statement.
Sure.
In my experience, especially like dealing with some of my family, like I would say I'm more like left, more in that space, whereas like some of my family are very right. And they just talk to me like, because I believe in some of these things, because I studied environment, it must mean that I believe all of these things that the left believe in, or you know what I mean? Like, it's just, and I see this all the time. So again, it's not everybody, but in my experience, it's just like we seem to generalize things of like, as I'm doing right now, like, again, like, of just like, I don't know, you believe this, you must believe this. And then like, just like, I don't know, if we had open discussions or like open conversations, or we were open to hearing what someone else has to say about like this idea of this.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely weird. I mean, like, for example, if you believe in women's rights, you must be left. If you believe in guns, you must be right.
Exactly.
And that's not necessarily the case. You know, like, everyone like pigeonholes those certain subjects and certain things, and it's kind of unfair. Yeah. And it also kind of brings like a divide when it doesn't need to be.
Oh, for sure.
You know,
the best thing, not the best thing, one of the best things I ever heard was like, the world is not black or white, it's gray. And I think like,
I don't think it even is gray. I just think it is.
You think it is?
It just is. Like, things are what they are, and you don't need to put them in a category. Like, you don't need to, you don't need to put it in a box.
Sure.
You know? Yeah. Like, you're not gay, straight, or whatever. You're just who you are. Yeah. You know?
Oh, for sure. And I think that's a very easy way of looking at things, because that's how I feel. Of like, I don't feel like any labels define me. Even like we're just talking with politics, I'm like sort of left, sort of right, sort of middle, sort of none. You know, and then the same thing with sexuality, sort of this, sort of that. And it's just like, I just think that labels create these like limitations for who we are, for what we believe, for the ability to change even. Like, oh, I said that this one time, it must mean that I'm going to be that way forever. Not necessarily.
How is that, by the way? So like, you started dating girls like, what, 3 years ago?
Not even that long, maybe right before the pandemic. During the pandemic. Was that 2019? 2019.
2019.
Yeah. So,
because I remember you called me saying that you like changed your, I don't know, some dating profile to like everybody. And that was interesting, just because like we came from a very like, you're supposed to like dudes, you're supposed to like girls type of like background. And like, you did date dudes in high school, you know, and that's what it was. Like, what do you think made you like branch out? No, because like I really don't know. Sure. Like, because I have a lot of gay friends out in LA, and I love them to death. They're my good friends. But like, are you? I mean, a lot of people believe that they're born gay. Sure. A lot of people. I mean, most people do. Yeah. And I don't know if that's a fact. Maybe. And it's just like, I don't really care. Like, be whoever you want to be, or be whoever you are. Like, I guess from your perspective, like what do you think that is? Like, you know? Sure. It's a hard question.
It's a loaded question. And I think it can come down to a lot of things. In my personal experience, like you said, like, I think that we're taught, especially where we come from in this small-ish town.
I mean, it's pretty big in California.
It's pretty big, but also like small town vibes. I don't like, you know, similar. Everyone thinks the same. Again, sorry, I hate that I'm using this word everyone, because that's not true. But like, a majority of the people expect you to be this way.
I don't think it's that. I think it's the majority of the people that you were surrounded with when you were growing up.
That's a good way of putting it. Yes. Like, who is in my immediate circle and who is having an immediate influence on my life. Yes. Those people all have like this specific idea. And so like growing up, I never knew anybody gay. I mean, I had like one cousin, and that was it. That was like my only experience. I didn't hear about it a lot. And then even when I went to college for the first time, I think it was like a very interesting space, but I felt like it was almost like I felt embarrassed. Like I would see the way that people talk about other people, you know, like to your face, everyone's really nice. And then you hear them say something about somebody else, you know, like, oh, they say it with like such a negative connotation.
No, they do. 100%.
Yeah. And so even though you're not talking at me, I hear what you say. So it makes me uncomfortable. And then it starts like planting these seeds in my own head. And so I don't know, I just was never open to that idea. And I remember thinking about it in my head and like how I felt about it. And I even remember like journaling about it. I've been like journaling for a long time. And I remember like being afraid to write it in my journal, which is like for me, and that's like a thing for me. And it was just like kind of these things, but I knew it was like something that was always there. But I was like, well, I like men too. So I guess I'll just like cling to this identity because it's more accepted. It's easier. It just like works, whatever. But it didn't work for me like in the long run, because I started seeing like every time I would date these like great men or these like good people, it was like, there's something missing. There's always something missing. And I didn't really know what that was. And then again, like going back to Costa Rica, like it was just like such an open space of like, I think I mentioned the school is called University for Peace. So like all these people with like peaceful mindsets and like just openness. And again, it's not, I want to be clear, it's not like a hippie place. I mean, we're talking about peace and the idea of like world resolution of conflicts and that kind of peace, but still like, I think you have to have like some level of open-mindedness to be able to talk about those things. And so that was the first time I ever felt like, oh, like maybe I could like start exploring this. I don't know. And so I started like being more open to that idea. And then I kissed someone for the first time, like someone just I had a crush on. And it was the first time in my life at 22 that I ever had butterflies. And that was like, this changed my world of like, oh my gosh, like there's this whole other thing out here. Like this thing that I thought was missing, this like excitedness piece, it was there. And so then that's when I like started being open to it. And I don't know, I think like going back to this idea of labels, like I enjoy being with men. I think men are great. I'm not like a man hater or anything. Sure. Like I think it's great. Like there's just always something missing. Not to say that will always be the case, or like maybe I just haven't been with the right person, but I feel something different on like a level of like, I get so excited, and I think it's exciting to be excited. And so I think like where we're going now, I don't know, like you talk about like whether someone's born gay or not. And I think like maybe this is like, I don't want to say controversial, but like, I don't know. I think like sexuality doesn't need all of these labels, like because you sleep with a man, you're this, or because you sleep with a woman, you're this. Like, I think it's just like part of our human experience. Like, I don't know if you've ever watched Game of Thrones. Yeah. There's one man who is bisexual. I don't know which one? It's been so long, I don't remember his name, but he sleeps with men and women, and he says like, I sleep with men, I sleep with women. Like, it's just a part of our human experience here to like enjoy the things on this earth. But it wasn't like he was gay or he was straight or like he just is. Yeah. And like, I loved that idea of like, why do I have to be anything? Like, why can't I just enjoy my human experience and follow my heart? And that's why like, I just hate when like we get into these like labels and things, which I'm guilty of too. Like it's just like you fall into these patterns. And so like, I don't know, I would argue like, so, I don't know, I would argue a lot of things, but I just like think that like it's just, if you feel something, it's just like how it is. You don't have to like label anything or define anything. And like, because for me, I don't know what my label would be. It's just like something that I feel good about and that I enjoy and like gives me butterflies.
Yeah, I agree to a certain extent. I think it just makes it simpler for most of humanity to label things, because it allows just things to work better. Like, I like this person because of this. I don't like this person because of this. We work together because of this. Like, I have this job because, like, for example, like any job, it's a label. And there's a definition of that label, and therefore you do the job. Versus if imagine no one had labels on their job. How would the society run? You know? I
mean, even like when you say that, I immediately thought about like, what do you think about someone who tells you they're a bartender immediately? Or what do you think about somebody who's like high into finance with like a corporate, like, at least in my own head, I start making assumptions like for no reason. I mean, like that's like something that I need to work on, but like just the things that I've been fed about these types of people. And like, I'm trying to break out of that, but just like these labels and like the things that they come with that just like take away from who you are.
I mean, it's status for sure. Yeah. It's just status, and it shouldn't necessarily be that way, right? But also, it's who values that status, right? Because like, if I'm someone who has a huge desire to make a lot of money, to have power in this world, like I'm gonna aspire to know everything about finance, to be a CPA, to do those things. Like those sound so romantic to me.
Sure.
Right. And then for example, like if I want to travel the world, if I want to experience as much life as I want, if I want to like just experience the world and everything like that, like I aspire to like have a life like you've lived so far, you know, and that's way better for that person than someone who wants to be a finance person. Does that make sense?
Sure.
So like someone might value your life way more than someone who wants to be finance, but it's only because there's labels.
Sure.
It's only because that's what they desire, and therefore that label is there, and I want to be that.
Sure.
So
Absolutely.
I do think that they're important.
Oh, yeah. I think again it goes back to like what you're saying of like what is important to you. So like like none of that is important to me. I just live my life based on how I feel, like where I can make an impact. Like of course like you need to make enough money to survive, but I've seen so much. Like I remember when I did AmeriCorps. You know,
what's AmeriCorps?
AmeriCorps is essentially like a service program for some who maybe know what the Peace Corps is. It's the same thing, like where you're just like serving in a community, like impoverished community or a community where like they need help, but in America. And so they pay you at the poverty line so that you can deal with some of these struggles that you're trying to address. And so like so much time we come into these situations. Yes. So I see somebody struggling with poverty, and so I think it must be this way. I'm going to come in with these solutions, and that's not the reality of it. Like sometimes like there's so much bigger picture than that. Like for example, when I was in AmeriCorps, I was making like $13,000 a year. I only did this for 1 year. My car broke down. I couldn't afford to fix it. And so I was having to take the bus to work, or like that was my only option at the time because I didn't know anybody. My bus route, I was living in Nashville. It was like 3-hour ride to work and a 15-minute drive. I was like, there's no way I can make that work on top of my 8-hour drive. And then how am I going to get groceries? Like we don't think about how like, well, why can't they just take the bus, or why can't like, you know? And so I feel like it opened my eyes so much of like these solutions that we tried to impose like in policy and without thinking about like the real issues of the problem. So I loved it in that sense, but like I don't know, it comes with a lot of issues too, because it is like a system of privilege that like that was temporary for me. And so like I don't know, there's like a whole debate about this, but essentially what I was saying was like when I did AmeriCorps, and like I think that I was limited in my ability to like really do anything because it was during COVID and it was just like a really tough time. But I remember people asking me, when are you going to get a real job? Like I literally had somebody ask me that, like, when are you going to get a real job? And I just like, I don't know, it goes back to the idea of a label. Like you assume that like this isn't having any contribution to my life. Like maybe it's not helping me in my career move, but it's taught me how to be
a good person,
or it's taught me how to see things from somebody else's perspective, or, you know, that my ideas aren't always the ideas. Like even though I've studied these things, I don't have the answers, and we have to give people a voice so that they can give us the answers for how to, you know, like how to help them essentially of like, we are just here to support. We're not here to impose anything. And I think that's sometimes what policy can do. But my point of this was like that year, although it was very difficult, it taught me so much, not necessarily in contribution to my career, but in contribution to how I see the world, how I define impact, like all of these things that I think contribute to the quality of my life. But because all people can see is a title and all people can see is a salary, I'm minimized. And I think that is crazy of like, I don't know. I mean,
it's just reality.
Yeah. And so that's my issue with labels sometimes.
I don't think they'll change.
For sure.
At least for a very, very, very long time. Yeah.
But going to what you said, like labels are not important to me. And I think it took a little bit of time to get through this, but now I don't care. Like now I make decisions for myself. Like if I'm going to go live in another country or do these things, I don't care about like what anybody says to me. It doesn't affect me anymore. And so now I feel free.
It's a really hard spot to be at, especially from a family perspective.
Yeah.
You know, and I think I just recently got there in the last few years. But like, for example, like I think when I was at UCLA, I came home and one of my like second uncles said the same thing. When are you going to get a real job? And I was just personal training at the time. And I was like, whoa, that kind of made me feel bad just because I'm so passionate about it. I like it. I was like, why did he say that? Because if you look at it from, again, an objective standpoint, you're like, oh, you're preventing other human beings from being unhealthy to where they don't get sick or they don't die early. Versus if you're a doctor, you fix it when they're already fucked up, when they are sick, when they are miserable. And I'm preventing that. And now I have an argument to that. And I was like, it is a real job. It is because X, Y, and Z, what I just said. And it's so funny how a lot of people won't see that, you know, or like a bartender or your job, like there's a huge impact there. Like you're living at the poverty line, so you understand it, and you're trying to like make a policy that will actually change versus just like, oh, take the bus.
Yes.
Like,
or it looks good on paper. And like essentially, just like challenging those things.
It's ridiculous. You know,
I think that's a really good way of putting it. And again, it just like goes against the grain sometimes. And I think we are becoming more open to that. But like your idea, like, I think that's such a good example of, I don't know, again, the way that we make an impact, but like changing the way you think about things. Like, we always do things like based on how we do them, you know, like doctors, and we associate like so much things to this. But then like if you change the issue at the front with exercise and food, you're solving the problem. And this is exactly like, maybe it doesn't look good on paper, but it's actually making an impact.
Sure.
And like we just aren't familiar with that idea all the time because it's not what we've been taught. And so again, like starting to change our ideas and have these open conversations. So like if you just let that conversation die, his mind has never changed. But if you can tell him,
at the point I did let it die.
Yeah,
for sure.
Sure. But then as you grow and like you come up with these ideas and we start to have these conversations and you make those realizations in your head and you can share them, then maybe now his ideas changed and it starts to like have a ripple effect going back to that.
No, for sure. I think it's super important. That's one thing that I believe school has done for me and for like a lot of people, or you should prioritize how to articulate your thoughts. Because for people to understand you, you have to make what you're saying understandable without reacting, without having a total emotion of it. And most people react. They have a ton of emotion, and either side isn't really heard.
Sure.
For example, like probably like not even 4 years ago, probably like 3-4 years ago, if someone said something that I didn't believe in, I would just keep arguing my belief versus listening to what they said.
Sure.
You know, but also learning how to articulate what you believe. Like, why do you believe a certain way? And explaining it in a manner. Because like, if I'm open-minded, I'm like, Sierra, explain why do you believe this way? And you're like, and I'm like, excuse me?
Yeah.
What did you say? You know? So it's important. It's important to articulate your thoughts and like really think them through, because if you don't do that, you have no impact on that person.
Sure.
You know?
I think you're exactly right. I think it is so much harder said than done because I am terrible at articulating my feelings, my words, my thoughts.
Yeah.
And like, especially too I've just never been good with conflict. So anytime the conversation levels above like a conversation, it starts to get heated or you start asking me questions, I like go into a panic and I cannot express myself. I have all this like knowledge and all these life experiences, and then I'm just like, and then I sound exactly, and then nobody can take me seriously. But it's like, wait, I know. It's just like, so I don't know. Do you have any advice for that? I mean, like, how do you overcome? For me, it's a lot of nerves and a lot of like imposter syndrome. But like, how?
Well, you have the experience. You have everything you've done there, like, and you already know. Like you just said that. The only thing is you have to listen to whoever's like arguing with you. And just let them talk it out until they're done talking. And you're like, are you done? And they could talk for like an hour. Are you done? Like, okay, I'm going to explain it this way.
Yeah.
And you just have to be calm and collected because like, if you're so emotional with it, and it's hard to not be emotional because you're so passionate about these subjects, right? Like if you're talking about especially politics or religion or your beliefs, like your beliefs are so to who you are. And if someone's talking shit on them, you just want to fucking fight back. But if you could listen, you could listen and really take it in, and then we're like, are you done? All right, cool. I understand where you're coming from. One, this is my perspective, and this is why. And then you say that back. Like, in my opinion, that's the only way that you can't just like freeze up. You have to be patient with it.
Patient.
It's mostly that.
Yeah, I like that.
And like,
word.
I mean, like, I struggle with it all the time. Or I used to, a lot more than I did now. And it happens with like any relationship. Some person at one point is going, like, friendship, relationship, whatever, family relationship, someone's not going to understand you. And you could either decide to react, or you could either decide to articulate your thoughts in a way that they might understand. And it's up to them to decide if it's right or wrong, but it's up to you to make it understandable.
That's a lot of pressure.
You know?
But no, I think you're right. And I like love what you say about patience and like taking the time to articulate what you're saying. I think like it's important. The best book, like this made me think of it. The best book I ever read was The Book Thief.
Oh,
and
okay, I've never read it.
It's historical fiction. But the big thing I took away from that was the power of words, like the power of what we say and how it can impact so many people.
Yeah.
And it was talking about Hitler
Yeah.
and how he had power behind his words. And that's why so many people followed blindly.
Yeah.
And so it argued to like challenge the way that we use our words and like how we speak hate and how we speak love and how we speak kindness. And even what you're saying, like how we speak intentionally to get a point across. And like, I don't know, I just really loved it and like how it talked about that. And like for me, I've never been good about like communicating through words.
Pause real quick. Like that alone, you're speaking that over yourself. I'm not very good with thinking over words. Therefore, you are saying you're not good with words and you will never do that, you know?
Sure.
And so like versus instead of saying that, like I'm very conscious about it now. Like my mom will tell me sometimes like, Nathan, like you're not patient, blah, blah. I was like, hey, I love you, but don't speak that over me. Like I will never say that about myself. I'm a very patient like person now. You didn't know me at this, like I'd had a lot of growth, and just please don't speak that over me. You know?
I love that.
And like you just saying that speaks it over yourself. And therefore, like it's still there. You're saying that you're not good with articulating your thoughts and words and you're reacting. Therefore, you still are.
Yeah. I think that this is actually like a hugely important topic because I think about this all the time. It's just like so easy to fall into these patterns of like, I don't know, self-doubt and imposter syndrome and I don't really know what I'm doing. And, you know, but exactly like you say, I've seen this more than anything in my life. Like exactly what you say. Like I'm a social person. I love people. I love talking to people.
Sure.
I have moved and started over all by myself
Many times.
Many times. And it's always easy. But when I came back to Nashville this time, so I've been there for a couple months now, I planted this seed in my head of like, I don't know how to talk to people. I don't know what I'm doing. I can't hold a conversation. Yeah. And it became my reality. Every time I like would, not every time, but most of the time I would go to a bar or just like go talk to somebody, I would just be so awkward and like stumble over my words and like, oh, who is this person? I don't even recognize myself because I know I can hold a conversation. Why am I struggling or on going on dates and like just face planting so hard because I don't understand. And I think you're exactly right. I think it's because I planted the seed of like, I just can't do it. And like, it's horrible. And then now recently I've started to like challenge that of like, no, I have so many friends and people who love to talk to me. And like, I just like love sharing those spaces with strangers. Again, it was like so much of my meaning comes from these connections with people that I don't know. Yeah. And so now that I've done that, I have not had that problem again. And I'm like, oh my, the power of the mind is incredible. But it's not something so easy to just say like, okay, I believe this. Like you just have to keep repeating it and keep changing it. But I think like...
Also, you're going to suck at everything when you first start. You know? Yeah. And not a lot of people like sucking at things. But the thing is like, if you suck at it long enough, you're decent. And if you're decent enough long enough, you're good. Sure. If you're good enough for a long time, you're great.
Yeah.
and then you're undeniable.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Wow, put that on a t-shirt. But I think that goes to, and this is like the hardest lesson that I've had to learn, of like not taking it so seriously. So if I do go on a date and I faceplant, like now I can laugh about it, you know, like it's like, I mean, or something else happens, or like it's just like if we just let things go instead of holding on to it and like this one thing happened, so it's gonna go like that every time, and just like roll it off your shoulders.
Sure.
And like just again, not take it so seriously. I think it's so much easier to do that.
Yeah, it's hard to like pull the emotion away, especially from like a dating thing and stuff like that. Like, because I've experienced most of the time. But the thing is, like, there's so many people in the world. Yeah. Maybe you come from a dating standpoint. All right, you fucked up one time, you got 8 billion more.
Yeah.
Like, you got a lot of chances to get it right.
And even if you do have a lot of chances. And I think even with the right person, if you faceplant so hard, it's not going to be a big deal, because like just sometimes energy is enough. And like if a lot of times when I'm looking back at my own experiences, the times that I did faceplant, it's like that was probably not meant to be anyway.
Sure.
Like, you know, like I faceplanted and I learned something, and like
well, most of the time you look back at it, like especially romantic relationships, you're like, yo, I'm so happy that ended.
Yeah. At the time though, I'm like, this is the worst thing, that my life is over. I'm never going to recover. And I'm like, I take time. Like I cannot move on quickly. I just like, I need to heal. And it just feels like the worst thing ever. But once I clear out of that emotional space, I'm like, you can see it for what it is. I'm like, wow, that needed to end. And I'm a better person because of it. I don't like looking at things like we've talked about this like the other day about regret and like looking back at your life. And I don't regret any of the people that I've dated. I don't regret any of the things that I've done with my life. I think like I have so much love for all of it and everyone, because it's made me who I am. And I think like if you hold on to this idea of like regret and looking back at these things like I don't know, with such like animosity almost sometimes, like I don't know, it takes away from letting that impact you in a positive way. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of your life, I think about it, you only have your experiences and your skills. And if you could experience as much life as you can and develop as many skills as you want, you're valuable. You know? And like, because if you could have all the money in the world, but you haven't had the experiences that Sarah Leach had.
Sure.
And then you're like 80 years old and you're sick and you're like, shit, I wish I went to Costa Rica, I went to whatever, you know, like no one could take that away from you.
Sure.
I can't take that away from you. Like my skills as a bartender or like doing podcasting and stuff like that, no one could take that away from me. Like I have those skills, I have these experiences. At the end of the day, if you have your really good skills and really good experiences, like fuck everyone else.
Sure. And I think even I would add on to that, I think that's great. Your skills, your experiences, and I think also the lives that you touch. I mean, like I will always bring it back to this idea of like people. I was actually listening to a podcast a while ago, but it like stuck with me, and she was talking about thinking about your life, not necessarily in the present, but like when you reach the end of your life, whenever that is. She said, write your own eulogy. Like what do you want people to say about you, about the life that you lived, the experiences you had, the things that you did. Write it. And then live your life aspiring to those, that idea of yourself.
That's dope.
I loved that, of like, what do I want people to say about me? How can I live my life in more of a way that reflects that? Or like, you know, if I wanted to be like this world traveler and, you know, that's what I want people to say about me. It's like I was open to new things. Like, let me do that now. And it just like takes away this idea of like waiting. Or one day it's like, no, I mean, we were just talking about this the other day of like, life is never certain. Like we think about like, especially in the sense of eulogy, like, you know, we're thinking, you know, hopefully 50 years from now or 60 years from now, but like, what if it was in a week? And how can I live my best life today? And taking away these titles or these career moves that maybe I will never achieve at 25. How can I impact the people? How can I develop myself or improve myself exactly where I am to be who I want to be? I don't know, and like just like thinking about living that way. Yeah,
I forgot this quote, but it was something along the lines of like, some people won't remember your name, some people won't remember what you do, some people won't remember whatever, but they will remember how you feel. how you made them
how you made them feel.
You know, and that's not, it's just like summarizing
Sure,
real
sure.
quick, but that's totally accurate. I mean, like, people, like, when something bad happens to you, you want to tell someone. When something good happens to you, you want to tell someone. Like, it's a people game.
Yeah.
You know, like, that's why, like, solitude in prisons is like the worst punishment. God, yeah. Imagine not talking to anybody for a year. Like, you'll fucking go crazy. You know?
Yeah. What happens?
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, we're not meant to be.
What do you call it? I wanted to talk about soccer real quick.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, because you played since you were what?
4. I started when I was 4 years old. I have a photo too. I can pull it out later. 4
till like all through college.
All through college, yeah.
How did, like, I guess, like, sports or like being a team sport or just like the work ethic of sports, like, how has it impacted your life?
Sure, in incredible ways. I mean, there's a lot of people who
haven't experienced like one competitive, one athletic thing ever.
Sure, you know? Sure. I would say that I'm not necessarily a competitive person in like a super serious way. Like, I think we've talked about, for me, soccer became, I mean, like, it's like an active meditation. I mean, like, I think we all have our things. Like, it was just something that I enjoyed and doing, and it was like a good community thing that you're hanging out with your friends. And I don't know, I felt like I was particularly like, but I was pretty good, and that's like a good feeling to like be good at something. But I found like more in my life, I was more interested of using soccer to go where I wanted to go, rather than like in a competitive way of I'm so serious about like playing super professionally or something. Like, I just wanted, you know, I got a scholarship to Seattle, and then I got a scholarship to New York, and like I didn't really care how good they were, or I just like wanted to go to these places. And so I think it was kind of like
a key.
Sure. Oh, for sure. That's a good way of putting it. Like a key, essentially, of like
to open the door to go to those places.
Yes, these things are so important to me in outside of like soccer realm. How can soccer be a tool essentially to like help me get there? But there were a couple things that like I missed out on, I think, because of it, like playing soccer at that level. Even growing up, I mean, I played rec, so like all year round you have like hours of practice a week. We have tournaments every weekend. I remember when I went to Costa Rica, so this was the first year that I didn't play soccer anymore. I had no hobbies. I had no skills. Like, all of my time had been spent playing soccer, and I did some other sports. So like that was it. And so I remember somebody asking me like, what do you like to do for fun? And I was like, I was 22. It's like, this is the first time in my life I've ever had time. And so
because you were just playing all the guys,
because I just was playing all the time. I would spend all my weekends traveling for soccer, playing soccer, and like, I mean, at that point too, like you don't have time for anything else. And so it gave me so much, but it also took a lot away of like but it gave me that like chance to explore that within myself, like at an older age, of like, what do I like? I had like a little bit of identity crisis, honestly, because I was like, oh my gosh, I'm 22 and I don't know anything about myself besides that I play soccer. And so it was an interesting space to like be able to explore that, and then all of that. But like before I like go too far in that direction, I think soccer taught me essentially that like you can get through anything. I mean, I remember being so miserable at times, especially in college, of like the purpose was like to make you run until you puke. Like it was like, I don't know, just at least where I was going to school, like it was so serious. And like, I mean, they were doing this with the intention of making you better, you know, making you a stronger person, a stronger player. And so I just remember like running, and like running was seen as a like form of punishment. Essentially, you do something wrong, you run, and like having to get through that, and like just being able to like, I'm going on my merry way. It has taught me so much about like just 10 more seconds. Like you can overcome anything in the grand scheme of things. Like if you just like power through. And like being in that kind of like physical torture space where, I mean, like not torture, but like where you're puking.
It's like the suffering will end at some point.
And I think it got me through like a lot more than I like probably give it credit for, of like that mindset of you can do this.
Honestly, I mean, I think you're just like a very resilient human being. And I think that could be because of like all the soccer growing up, you know? Yeah.
A lot of injuries, a lot of like pain, a lot of just, I guess that like could be attributed to it a little bit. And I think that's interesting about like what makes us who we are. I mean, like we're so set on like it must be our family and it must be I don't know, our experience, nature versus nurture, and like all these things, but like the things that can be attributed to nurture, like all the things that make us who we are. Could be soccer, it could be painting, it could be dancing, it could be like all of these things we don't necessarily think of that can have such an impact of our life, and then hidden things within that. So like maybe my most impactful moment in soccer was a coach I had, or a player, or a moment, and like those things I think like can be found anywhere. And I don't know, I just think it's so interesting to think about of like all the things that make us who we are. We don't think about these like little small, like if you wouldn't even said that right now, I'd be like, soccer has no impact on my life. No, I played for 20 years, but like, nah. And now that I think about it, I'm like, shit. I'm a different person because of it, you know? And I think that's like to say for everything in our life. I mean, just like how you see something.
I totally agree. Well, we have dinner in like 20 minutes and I feel like we could talk here for hours. And and that was a beautiful conversation. We'll do it again sometime.
Sure, absolutely.
And happy birthday.
Thank you.
Love you lots.
Yeah, I love you.
All right. See y'all. Bye. See you, Leech, everybody.